Picture this. You're sitting alone at a plastic table in your father's backyard while everyone else celebrates inside his mansion. The sounds of laughter and clinking glasses drift through the French doors, but you're not invited to join. Your designer suit feels out of place among the garden furniture, and you're wondering if this is rock bottom. Then you hear it. The distant hum of rotor blades cutting through the evening air, getting louder by the second. That helicopter? It's mine, and everything is about to change. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday. Heavy cardstock, gold embossing, the works. Richard Blackwood cordially invites you to celebrate his 65th birthday. No dear son, or hope to see you there. Just my name printed in an elegant script like I was any other guest. I hadn't spoken to my father in 3 years. Not since the day he chose his new wife's opinion over his own son's future. But something about that invitation, maybe it was the formal tone, maybe it was curiosity, made me decide to show up. The Blackwood estate sat on 40 acres in Malibu, overlooking the Pacific. I'd grown up in that house, but as I pulled through the iron gates in my rental car, it felt like visiting a museum of someone else's childhood. The circular driveway was packed with Bentleys, Maseratis, and Tesla Model S's. My modest rental looked like it belonged in the staff parking area. Inside, the house buzzed with conversation and jazz music. 200 guests mingled in the grand foyer, champagne flutes in hand, everyone dressed to impress. I recognized faces from my father's business world: investment bankers, real estate moguls, tech executives, people who'd watched me grow up but now avoided eye contact. "Marcus," my stepmother Vivian appeared beside me, her smile as artificial as her recent facelift. "We're so glad you could make it. Your father will be thrilled." She was lying, of course. Vivian had spent the last 5 years systematically poisoning my relationship with my father, and we both knew it. But I played along. "Wouldn't miss it," I said, accepting a champagne flute from a passing waiter. "Oh, before I forget," Vivian's voice took on that syrupy tone she used when delivering bad news wrapped in false kindness. "We had a little seating situation with dinner. The main dining room filled up faster than expected. You know how these things go. So we've set up a lovely table for you outside on the terrace. Much more peaceful out there." My stomach dropped. She was banishing me to the kids' table, except I was 32 years old and there were no kids. Just me, alone, while everyone else dined inside. "The terrace sounds perfect," I lied, my jaw clenching. The next hour was a masterclass in humiliation. I watched through the floor-to-ceiling windows as my father worked the room, accepting congratulations and telling stories to his captivated audience. Old family friends who'd known me since I was in diapers walked past me like I was invisible. When I tried to approach a group that included my father's business partner, they suddenly found reasons to excuse themselves. My father noticed me exactly once. Our eyes met across the room, and for a moment I thought he might come over. Instead, he raised his glass in a brief acknowledgement and turned back to his conversation. Dinner was announced at 8. The crowd moved toward the dining room like a well-dressed herd, leaving me standing alone in the foyer. A server approached with an apologetic smile. "Mr. Blackwood, I'm supposed to show you to your table." The terrace table was set for one. White tablecloth, silver cutlery, a single candle flickering in the evening breeze. Through the French doors, I could see the main dining room blazing with light and laughter. My father sat at the head of a long table, surrounded by his new family and chosen friends. I sat down and stared at my reflection in the wine glass. This was my life now. The successful son was reduced to a party of one at his own father's birthday celebration. 3 years ago, I'd been next in line to inherit the family construction business. Now I was running a small contracting company out of a rented office space in Burbank, struggling to make payroll every month. The server brought my meal, the same prime rib they were serving inside, but somehow it tasted like sawdust. I ate mechanically, watching my father's silhouette through the glass as he stood to give a toast. The crowd erupted in applause, but I couldn't hear the words. I was literally and figuratively on the outside looking in. That's when I heard it, a distant thumping sound, barely audible over the dinner conversation inside. At first, I thought it was construction equipment from a neighboring property. But the sound grew louder, more distinct. The unmistakable whop-whop-whop of helicopter rotors. The guests in the dining room began to notice too. Conversations paused as people turned toward the windows, confusion spreading across their faces. The sound grew deafening, and suddenly a spotlight blazed down from above, illuminating the terrace where I sat. My phone buzzed. A text from my business partner Jake, "Package delivered, hope you're ready for this." I stood up slowly, straightening my tie as the helicopter descended toward the estate's back lawn. It was a sleek black Bell 429, the kind executives used for short hops between meetings, the kind that cost more per hour than most people made in a month. The rotor wash sent napkins flying and knocked over champagne glasses inside the house. Guests pressed against the windows, trying to understand what was happening. My father's face appeared in the doorway, his expression shifting from confusion to something approaching concern. The helicopter touched down with surprising gentleness, its rotors slowly winding down. The pilot, a woman in her 50s with silver hair and aviator sunglasses, stepped out and walked toward me with a folder in her hand. "Mr. Blackwood?" she called over the dying engine noise. "That's me." She handed me the folder. "Congratulations, sir. Everything you requested is in order." I opened the folder and pulled out a thick document. The letterhead made my heart race. Westfield Development Corporation Acquisition Agreement. My hands shook slightly as I read the summary page. 6 months ago, I'd started a small contracting company with my severance pay and a bank loan. What my father didn't know was that I'd spent the last 3 years building relationships with investors who'd grown tired of his old-school methods. While he was busy playing happy family, I was quietly assembling the capital to buy out his biggest competitor. The document in my hands represented a $50 million acquisition. Westfield Development was now mine, along with their contracts, their skilled workforce, and their reputation as the most innovative construction company on the West Coast. In one move, I'd gone from struggling contractor to my father's biggest rival. The dining room had gone completely silent. Every face was pressed against the glass, watching me read the contract. I could see my father pushing through the crowd, his face a mix of confusion and growing alarm. I looked up at the helicopter, then at the house full of people who'd spent the evening treating me like a disappointment. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd literally seated me outside the party, and now the party was about to change venues. The pilot was waiting beside the helicopter, her hand on the door handle. "Ready when you are, Mr. Blackwood." I took one last look at the terrace table where I'd eaten alone, then at the faces watching me through the glass. My father had finally made it to the French doors, and our eyes met again. This time, he didn't look away. I folded the contract, slipped it into my jacket pocket, and walked toward the helicopter. The rotors were already spinning up again, and I had to duck slightly as I approached the passenger door. Behind me, I heard the French doors open and my father's voice calling my name, but I didn't turn around. I'd spent the entire evening being ignored, and now it was my turn to do the ignoring. The helicopter lifted off smoothly, and I watched the estate shrink below us. The party continued inside, but I could see guests spilling out onto the terrace, pointing up at us as we disappeared into the night sky. My phone rang. It was my father. I let it go to voicemail. The helicopter touched down at Van Nuys Airport 20 minutes later. As the rotors wound down, I finally checked my phone. 17 missed calls from my father, 12 from Vivian, and countless texts from numbers I didn't recognize. The party guests had clearly gotten hold of my contact information. "Sir?" The pilot turned to face me. "Your car is waiting in Hangar 7. I thanked her and stepped out onto the tarmac. A black Mercedes S-Class sat idling nearby, its driver already holding the rear door open. This was all Jake's doing. My business partner had orchestrated every detail of tonight's dramatic exit. The drive to downtown LA gave me time to process what had just happened. 6 months of secret meetings, late-night phone calls with investors, and legal paperwork had culminated in this moment. But buying Westfield Development was only the beginning. The real challenge started tomorrow. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. "Meet me at the office, we need to talk." The Westfield Development headquarters occupied 3 floors of a glass tower in Century City. Even at 11 p.m., the building hummed with activity. I'd been inside these offices before, back when they were my father's biggest competitor. Now they were mine. Jake was waiting in the executive conference room, surrounded by stacks of files and legal documents. He looked up as I entered, his expression unreadable. "So," he said, gesturing to a chair across from him, "how did it feel?" "A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now back to where we left off." "Surreal," I admitted, loosening my tie. 24 hours ago, I was struggling to pay rent on a Burbank office. Now I own a company worth $50 million. $62 million, actually, Jake corrected. "The final numbers came in this afternoon. You officially own the largest construction company in Southern California." The weight of that statement hit me like a physical blow. I'd grown up hearing my father brag about Blackwood Construction's market share, their prestigious contracts, their reputation. Now I controlled something bigger. "There's more," Jake continued, sliding a folder across the table. "Our legal team finished the patent research. Remember that sustainable building technique your father dismissed 3 years ago? The one that cost you your job?" I remembered. It had been my graduate thesis project, a revolutionary method for constructing energy-efficient high-rises using recycled materials. My father had called it environmental nonsense and refused to let the company pursue it. Our argument over that decision had been the final straw in our relationship. "Westfield has been developing something similar," Jake explained, "but they never filed the proper patents. Your original research still belongs to you." I opened the folder and found myself staring at patent applications I'd forgotten existed. The technology I'd developed in business school, the same innovation my father had rejected, was now worth millions in potential licensing deals. "The irony is perfect," Jake said with a slight smile. "Your father fired you for being too forward-thinking. Now that same vision is about to put you ahead of his entire company." Over the next hour, Jake walked me through Westfield's current projects. They had contracts with 3 major hotel chains, a deal to build a new shopping complex in Beverly Hills, and preliminary agreements for 2 residential developments in Manhattan Beach. The company employed over 400 people and had a backlog of work extending 18 months into the future. "What about the transition?" I asked. "The employees don't know me. Half of them probably see me as Richard Blackwood's disgraced son." "That's tomorrow's problem," Jake said. "Tonight, you need to decide what kind of CEO you want to be. Are you going to run this company to prove a point to your father, or are you going to build something that stands on its own?" The question lingered as I drove home to my modest apartment in West Hollywood. Everything felt different now. The same streets, the same buildings, but I was seeing them through different eyes. I wasn't just Marcus Blackwood anymore. I was the CEO of Westfield Development. My phone rang as I pulled into my parking garage. My father's name appeared on the screen. This time I answered. "Marcus." His voice was strained, careful. "We need to talk." "Do we?" I kept my tone neutral. "What you did tonight, that was quite a performance. But we both know this isn't about business. This is about family." I almost laughed. "Family? Is that what you call banishing me to eat alone while you celebrate with everyone else?" "That was Vivian's idea. I didn't know." "You didn't know because you didn't ask. Just like you didn't ask before you fired me. Just like you didn't ask before you decided my ideas weren't worth pursuing." There was a long pause. "I made mistakes, Marcus, I know that. But buying my competitor out of spite isn't going to fix anything." "This wasn't about spite," I said, surprised by the steadiness in my own voice. "This was about survival. You taught me that business is business, remember? Well, business is about to get very interesting." I hung up before he could respond. The next morning, I stood in the lobby of Westfield Development at 7 a.m., watching employees arrive for work. They moved with purpose, coffee cups in hand, completely unaware that their company had changed hands the night before. In a few hours, I would address them as their new CEO. The thought terrified and exhilarated me in equal measure. My assistant, I had an assistant now, approached with a tablet full of appointment requests. "Mr. Blackwood, the executive team is ready for the morning briefing. Also, there are 17 media requests about last night's helicopter situation." News traveled fast in Los Angeles business circles. Someone at the party had filmed my dramatic exit, and the video was already making rounds on social media. The headline on one business blog read, "Construction Dynasty Air Stages Helicopter Takeover at Father's Birthday Party." "Cancel the media requests," I told her. "Schedule a company-wide meeting for 10 a.m. and get me everything we have on the Meridian Hotel project." The Meridian Hotel was going to be my first test. It was a luxury property in downtown LA, and Westfield had been competing against my father's company for the contract. The client was supposed to make their decision next week. I spent the morning reviewing blueprints, cost projections, and timeline estimates. The Westfield team had done solid work, but I could see areas for improvement. More importantly, I could see opportunities to incorporate the sustainable building techniques my father had rejected. At 10 a.m., I stood before 400 employees in the company's main conference hall. They stared at me with a mixture of curiosity and concern. I recognized some faces from industry events, but most were strangers. "I'm Marcus Blackwood," I began, my voice carrying across the silent room. "As of yesterday evening, I'm the new owner and CEO of Westfield Development." A murmur ran through the crowd. I could see people pulling out their phones, probably looking up news articles about the helicopter incident. "I know what you're thinking," I continued. "You're wondering if this is some kind of family drama playing out in your workplace. You're worried about your jobs, your projects, your future. Let me address those concerns directly." I clicked the first slide of my presentation. It showed Westfield's current projects alongside projected growth figures. "We're not changing course because we're already on the right course. Westfield Development has built its reputation on innovation, quality, and client satisfaction. Those values align perfectly with my vision for the future." The room relaxed slightly. I could see shoulders dropping, people leaning forward with interest rather than defensive postures. "But we're also going to push boundaries," I said, clicking to the next slide. "We're going to pursue sustainable building practices that don't just meet current environmental standards, they set new ones. We're going to use technology and innovation to solve problems that the industry has been ignoring." I outlined my plans for the next 6 months. New patents, expanded services, and a corporate culture focused on forward-thinking solutions. By the time I finished, the room was buzzing with excitement rather than anxiety. As employees filed out, discussing the changes among themselves, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, the satisfaction of leading rather than following. This wasn't about proving anything to my father anymore, this was about building something meaningful. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Impressive presentation, we should talk. Victoria Chen, Meridian Hotel Group." The game was about to begin. Victoria Chen's office overlooked the bustling streets of downtown LA from the 42nd floor of the Wilshire Grand Tower. She was younger than I expected, maybe 35, with sharp eyes and an even sharper business suit. The kind of woman who had probably fought twice as hard as any man to reach her position as Senior Vice President of Development at Meridian Hotel Group. "Mr. Blackwood," she said, gesturing to a chair across from her marble desk, "your timing is impeccable. We were supposed to announce our contractor decision tomorrow." "Were you supposed to?" I caught the past tense immediately. "Your little helicopter stunt last night changed some minds on our board. Half of them think you're a publicity-seeking amateur. The other half think you're exactly the kind of bold leader we need for this project." She slid a thick folder across her desk. "The Meridian Downtown will be a 40-story luxury hotel with retail space, conference facilities, and a rooftop restaurant. The budget is $200 million. The timeline is 18 months from groundbreaking to grand opening." I opened the folder and felt my pulse quicken. This wasn't just any hotel project. It was the kind of landmark development that defined careers. The architectural renderings showed a stunning glass tower that would reshape the downtown skyline. "Your father's company submitted a very competitive bid," Victoria continued. "Traditional construction methods, proven timeline, established relationships with subcontractors, everything you'd expect from Blackwood Construction. But tradition doesn't win headlines. Traditional doesn't get us featured in Architectural Digest or attract the kind of international attention that drives bookings." She leaned forward. "Your presentation this morning about sustainable innovation that got our attention." I studied the project specifications more carefully. The energy requirements alone were staggering. A building this size would consume massive amounts of electricity, water, and heating fuel. Traditional construction would create thousands of tons of waste. What if I told you we could build this hotel to LEED Platinum standards while staying within budget? I asked. Victoria's eyebrows rose. I'd say you're either brilliant or delusional. LEED Platinum certification typically adds 20% to construction costs. Not with the right approach. I pulled out my phone and showed her photos from my graduate research. Recycled steel framework, solar integrated glass panels, rainwater collection systems, geothermal heating. The initial investment pays for itself within 3 years through energy savings. And you can guarantee this? I can do better than I can guarantee it. I can build you a prototype. Victoria sat back in her chair. Go on. Give me 30 days. I'll construct a scale model of 1 floor using our sustainable methods. You can test the energy efficiency, structural integrity, and cost projections. If it doesn't meet every specification, you go with my father's company. And if it does? Then Westfield Development gets the contract, and you get the most environmentally advanced luxury hotel in North America. She was quiet for a long moment, studying my face. You realize this is a massive gamble? If you fail, you'll have wasted a month and significant resources. If you succeed, you'll be taking on the biggest project in your company's history. I'm aware of the stakes. Your father called me this morning, she said suddenly. He wanted to discuss the contract timeline. He also mentioned that you might be emotionally compromised by recent family issues. The subtle manipulation was classic Richard Blackwood. Plant seeds of doubt about my mental state while positioning himself as the stable alternative. What did you tell him? That business decisions should be based on capability, not family drama. Victoria stood and walked to her window. But I'll be honest with you, Marcus. Some of our board members are concerned about your company's track record. Westfield has handled mid-size projects successfully, but never anything approaching this scale. She was right, of course. The Meridian project was 10 times larger than anything Westfield had attempted. But that's exactly why I needed it. This contract would either establish us as a major player or destroy us completely. I understand the concerns, I said. But consider this. Every major construction company started with their first major project. Someone took a chance on them. I'm asking you to take a chance on innovation rather than playing it safe with the status quo. Victoria turned back to me. 30 days for the prototype. But I want daily progress reports, and I want to inspect the work personally. 1 day late, 1 specification was missed, and the deal is off. We shook hands, and I left her office with a mixture of excitement and terror. In the elevator down to street level, I called Jake. Please tell me you have good news about the Meridian contract, he said by way of greeting. I have potentially catastrophic news, I replied. We have 30 days to build a prototype that could win us the biggest project in company history. Define, quote, potentially catastrophic. If we fail, we're probably finished. If we succeed, we're going to need to hire 100 new employees and lease additional warehouse space within 60 days. There was a pause. I'll start making calls. The next month became a blur of 18-hour days, emergency meetings, and controlled chaos. I moved a cot into my office because going home seemed like a waste of time. The Westfield team embraced the challenge with an intensity that surprised me. Engineers worked overtime to adapt my sustainable building techniques for luxury hotel applications. Architects redesigned structural elements to accommodate solar panels and rainwater collection systems. Project managers created detailed timelines that accounted for every possible delay. The prototype took shape in a warehouse in Carson, about 20 miles south of downtown LA. We constructed a full-scale replica of the Meridian's 15th floor, complete with hotel rooms, corridor space, and all the mechanical systems. Solar panels on the roof powered LED lighting throughout the structure. Recycled steel beams supported walls made from compressed sustainable materials. The heating system used geothermal energy piped up from 200 feet underground. My father tried to interfere twice. First, he called some of our suppliers and suggested they might want to reconsider their contracts with Westfield. When that didn't work, he filed a complaint with the city building department, claiming our prototype didn't meet safety standards. Both attempts backfired. Our suppliers remained loyal, and the building inspection actually worked in our favor. The inspector was impressed by our innovative safety features. On day 28, Victoria Chen arrived for the final inspection. She brought 3 board members, 2 engineers, and an environmental consultant. They spent 4 hours examining every detail of the prototype, testing systems, measuring energy output, and reviewing our cost projections. The energy efficiency is remarkable, the environmental consultant admitted. These solar panels generate 30% more electricity than traditional systems. And the structural integrity? Victoria asked her engineers. Actually superior to conventional construction, one of them replied. The recycled steel framework is stronger than we expected, and the sustainable materials provide better insulation. But the real test came when Victoria asked about cost overruns. This was where most sustainable projects failed. They delivered environmental benefits, but exceeded budget projections. Total cost per square foot is actually 8% below traditional construction, Jake reported, handing her a detailed breakdown. The sustainable materials are less expensive than conventional alternatives, and the prefabricated components reduce labor costs. Victoria studied the numbers for several minutes. These figures seem too good to be true. They're conservative estimates, I said. We built in buffers for unexpected costs. The actual savings will likely be higher. On day 30, exactly as promised, Victoria called with the board's decision. Congratulations, Mr. Blackwood. The Meridian Downtown project is yours. I hung up the phone and looked around the warehouse where my team had been working for a month. Exhausted faces broke into smiles. Someone started clapping, and soon the entire space echoed with applause. What's our first move? Jake asked. We celebrate for exactly 10 minutes, I said, checking my watch. Then we get back to work. We just committed to completing a $200 million project in 18 months. That evening, I drove home to my apartment for the first time in a week. My phone had been buzzing with congratulatory messages from suppliers, subcontractors, and industry contacts. But there was one message that stood out. A voicemail from my father. Marcus, I heard about the Meridian contract. I want you to know that despite our differences, I'm proud of what you've accomplished. Call me when you're ready to talk. I stared at the phone for a long moment. 6 months ago, I would have called him back immediately, desperate for his approval. Now, sitting in my apartment with the city lights spreading out below me, I realized I didn't need his validation anymore. But maybe, eventually, I might want it. I set the phone aside and opened my laptop. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. The Meridian project would test every skill I'd developed and every lesson I'd learned. Success would establish Westfield Development as a major force in the industry. Failure would vindicate everyone who'd doubted me. The helicopter ride from my father's party felt like a lifetime ago. That night, I'd been running away from humiliation. Now I was running toward something much more challenging, the chance to build something that would outlast all of us. My phone buzzed with a text from Victoria Chen. Groundbreaking ceremony is scheduled for next Monday. Hope you're ready for the spotlight. I smiled and typed back, I've been ready my whole life. The groundbreaking ceremony was scheduled for 10 a.m. on a crisp Monday morning in October. I arrived at the downtown construction site at 7, wanting to personally inspect every detail before the media and VIPs descended on us. The lot had been cleared and surveyed, with bright orange markers indicating where the foundation would be poured. 3 news vans were already parked across the street, their satellite dishes pointed skyward. The Meridian project had generated significant media attention, not just because of the sustainable construction methods, but because of the family drama surrounding the contract award. Business reporters loved a good David versus Goliath story, especially when it involved helicopters and birthday parties. Nervous? Jake asked, joining me at the construction site's perimeter. Terrified, I admitted, but it's good terror, the kind that keeps you sharp. Victoria Chen arrived at 9:30 with a small army of Meridian executives, board members, and marketing personnel. She wore a hard hat with the hotel group's logo and carried a ceremonial golden shovel that would never touch actual dirt. Ready to make history? She asked, shaking my hand for the photographers. More than ready. The crowd began gathering around the makeshift stage we'd erected near the site's center. I recognized faces from the construction industry, environmental groups, and city government. Mayor Patricia Gonzalez had agreed to speak at the ceremony, lending official weight to the project's environmental significance. What I didn't expect was to see my father's black Bentley pull up to the curb at exactly 10 a.m. Richard Blackwood stepped out wearing his best suit and the confident expression he'd perfected over 3 decades in business. He wasn't on the guest list, but excluding him would have created more drama than allowing him to attend. He walked through the crowd with practiced ease, shaking hands and offering congratulations that probably tasted like sawdust in his mouth. "Marcus," he approached me just as the ceremony was about to begin. "Congratulations on the contract. This is quite an achievement." "Thank you." I kept my voice neutral, professional. "I'm surprised to see you here." "This is still a family business," he said quietly. "Success in the construction industry benefits everyone. I wanted to show my support." Before I could respond, Victoria Chen stepped up to the podium and called for attention. The ceremony began with remarks from the mayor about downtown revitalization and environmental leadership. Then Victoria spoke about Meridian's commitment to sustainable luxury hospitality. Finally, it was my turn. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, looking out at the assembled crowd, "today we're not just breaking ground on a hotel. We're breaking ground on a new approach to urban development." I outlined the building's environmental features: solar panels that would generate 40% of the hotel's electricity, rainwater collection systems that would reduce water consumption by 30%, and geothermal heating that would cut energy costs in half. The crowd listened intently, and I could see photographers capturing every gesture. "The Meridian downtown will prove that luxury and sustainability aren't opposing forces," I continued. "They're complementary elements that create buildings worthy of the 21st century." Applause filled the construction site. I picked up my ceremonial shovel and drove it into the prepared soil, officially beginning the largest project in Westfield Development's history. The real work started the next morning. Our first task was excavating 60 feet down to bedrock for the foundation. This required coordinating with the city's utility department to reroute underground cables, working around subway tunnel specifications, and managing noise restrictions that limited our operating hours. By November, we had 23 subcontractors on site and were employing over 200 workers. The foundation pour alone required 400 cubic yards of concrete, delivered in a carefully choreographed sequence of mixer trucks arriving every 15 minutes from 5 a.m. to 2 p.m. I spent my days moving between the construction site, the Westfield offices, and supplier meetings across the city. The sustainable materials we needed weren't always available through traditional channels, which meant establishing relationships with specialized manufacturers in Oregon, Colorado, and North Carolina. The recycled steel beams arrived from a facility in Pittsburgh that had been converting old buildings into structural components for 30 years. The solar-integrated glass panels came from a cutting-edge manufacturer in Phoenix that had developed the technology specifically for high-rise applications. Every material choice required extensive testing, documentation, and approval from city inspectors who were encountering many of these innovations for the first time. December brought unexpected challenges. A winter storm system stalled over Southern California, dumping 6 inches of rain in 48 hours. Our construction site became a muddy lake, and we lost 4 days waiting for the water to recede and the ground to stabilize. "We're already behind schedule," Jake warned during our weekly progress meeting. "If we hit any more weather delays, we'll be looking at a 20-month timeline instead of 18. "Then we work smarter, not just harder," I replied. "What can we prefabricate off-site to make up time?" We redesigned our construction sequence to build major components in controlled warehouse environments while the foundation cured. Hotel room modules were assembled in Carson and transported downtown on flatbed trucks. Mechanical systems were pre-tested in our facility before installation. The approach required more coordination but eliminated weather-related delays. By January, the Meridian's skeleton was rising above street level. The recycled steel framework created dramatic geometric patterns against the Los Angeles skyline. Architecture bloggers began posting photos of the construction progress, praising the building's industrial elegance and, quote, sustainable sophistication. My father called in February. "I drive past your construction site every day," he said without preamble. "It's impressive work, Marcus. I wanted you to know that." Thank you. I was genuinely surprised by the admission. I also wanted to apologize. For the birthday party, for the things I said when you left the company, for not recognizing your potential sooner. The conversation I'd been avoiding for months was finally happening. Dad, Let me finish. You proved something important with this project. You proved that innovation and tradition can coexist. That's a lesson I should have learned from you instead of fighting you. We talked for 20 minutes about the Meridian's construction techniques, the challenges of sustainable building, and the changing landscape of the construction industry. For the first time in years, we were discussing business as equals rather than father and son. I'm proud of you, he said before hanging up. Your mother would be proud too. The mention of my mother, who had died when I was 15, hit me unexpectedly hard. She'd been the one who encouraged my interest in engineering, who'd helped me build model structures in our garage, who'd believed in my potential even when I doubted it myself. Spring brought the installation of the solar panel system, a complex process that required coordination with aerospace engineers who specialized in precision mounting systems. Each panel had to be positioned within millimeter tolerances to maximize energy capture while maintaining the building's aesthetic integrity. The rainwater collection system presented its own challenges. We were essentially building a massive plumbing network inside the building's structure, with pipes and storage tanks that had to be integrated with the hotel's conventional water systems. The city's water department required extensive testing to ensure the collected rainwater met safety standards for non-potable uses. By summer, the Meridian was 40 stories of glass and steel reaching toward the sky. The sustainable materials had performed better than projected. The building was ahead of schedule and under budget. More importantly, it was generating excitement throughout the construction industry. Architectural firms from around the world sent delegations to study our methods. The American Institute of Architects featured the project in their monthly magazine. The U.S. Green Building Council announced that the Meridian would be used as a case study for future LEED Platinum certifications. But the real test was still ahead. A luxury hotel isn't just a building. It's a complex organism that has to function flawlessly 24 hours a day. The mechanical systems, the electrical grid, the elevators, the kitchen equipment, the room controls, everything had to work together seamlessly. In August, we began the systems integration phase. This was where many construction projects failed, when individual components that worked perfectly in isolation couldn't communicate with each other in the real world. The geothermal heating is online, our chief engineer reported during a morning briefing. Temperature control is functioning in all 40 floors. Solar panel efficiency? Exceeding projections by 12%, we're generating enough electricity to power the entire building during daylight hours. Water collection? The rainwater system is fully operational. We're capturing and purifying an average of 2,000 gallons per day. Each system that came online felt like a small victory. But I knew the ultimate test wouldn't come until the hotel opened and real guests began using our sustainable luxury environment. Victoria Chen scheduled the final inspection for September 15th. She arrived with the same team that had evaluated our prototype, plus additional experts from the hospitality industry and environmental consultants. They spent 3 days examining every aspect of the building. They tested the elevators, evaluated the room controls, measured noise levels, and assessed the integration between sustainable systems and luxury amenities. The energy efficiency is remarkable, the environmental consultant reported. This building will use 60% less energy than a conventional hotel of the same size. And the guest experience? Victoria asked. Seamless. The sustainable technology is completely invisible to users. They'll enjoy luxury accommodations while unknowingly participating in the most environmentally advanced hospitality experience in North America. Victoria looked at me across the conference table. Mr. Blackwood, I think we're ready to open a hotel. The grand opening was scheduled for October 21st, exactly 1 year after the groundbreaking ceremony. As I stood in the Meridian's lobby, watching the finishing touches being applied to the registration desk, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. 18 months ago, I'd been sitting alone at a plastic table in my father's backyard, wondering if I'd hit rock bottom. Now I was standing in the lobby of the most innovative luxury hotel in the world, built by the company I'd created from nothing. The helicopter ride that night had been about escape. Everything since then had been about construction. Not just of buildings, but of a future I'd never imagined possible. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. "Proud of you, son. See you at the opening." For the first time in years, I was looking forward to seeing him too. The Meridian Downtown's grand opening drew over 500 guests to what architectural magazines were already calling the future of sustainable luxury. The lobby buzzed with conversations in multiple languages as international hotel executives, environmental advocates, and construction industry leaders mingled beneath our revolutionary solar-integrated ceiling. I stood near the registration desk, watching Victoria Chen guide a group of Japanese investors through the hotel's environmental features. They examined the living wall that purified air while creating a stunning visual backdrop, and marveled at the real-time energy display showing the building's net-positive electrical generation. Marcus Blackwood? I turned to find Sarah Martinez, a reporter from Architectural Digest, holding a digital recorder. Behind her, a photographer was capturing images of guests interacting with the hotel's sustainable features. "Ms. Martinez, thank you for covering the opening." "This building is remarkable," she said, gesturing around the lobby, "but I'm more interested in the story behind it. 18 months ago, you were running a small contracting company. Now you've completed the largest sustainable construction project in Los Angeles history. That's quite a transformation." "It started with a vision that was ahead of its time," I replied. "Sometimes the best innovations come from being forced to think differently." "Speaking of thinking differently, your father just arrived." I looked toward the entrance and saw Richard Blackwood walking through the lobby with Vivian beside him. He wore his most formal tuxedo and an expression I'd never seen before, genuine admiration mixed with something that might have been regret. "Excuse me," I told Sarah Martinez, "I have someone to see." My father approached slowly, his eyes taking in every detail of the lobby design. When he reached me, he extended his hand with uncharacteristic formality. "Son," he said simply, "this is extraordinary work. Thank you for coming." "I wouldn't have missed it." He paused, studying my face. "I owe you an apology that's about 20 years overdue. I spent so much time trying to teach you to follow in my footsteps that I never considered you might be meant to blaze your own trail." Vivian stood silently beside him, her usual artificial smile replaced by something approaching respect. The woman who had orchestrated my banishment to the outdoor table now found herself standing in the lobby of my greatest achievement. "The sustainable technology is remarkable," my father continued. "But what impressed me most was watching you manage this project. You've become the kind of leader I always hoped to be." Before I could respond, Jake appeared at my side with a tablet showing real-time occupancy data. "Marcus, we need to talk," he said urgently. "The reservation system is showing something unusual." I excused myself and followed Jake to a quiet corner of the lobby. The tablet displayed booking numbers that made my pulse quicken. "We're at 97% occupancy for the next 6 months," Jake reported. "The waiting list for reservations extends into next year. Corporate bookings are coming in from companies that want to host events in the world's most environmentally advanced venue." "What about operational costs?" 40% below projections. The sustainable systems are performing better than our most optimistic estimates. We're generating enough excess solar power to sell electricity back to the grid." The financial implications were staggering. The Meridian wasn't just an environmental success, it was about to become one of the most profitable hotels in the city. "There's more," Jake continued. "Victoria Chen wants to discuss replicating this model in 5 other cities. She's talking about a $100 million expansion contract." I looked around the lobby, watching guests interact with technology I'd developed in a graduate school classroom 5 years ago. Environmental innovations that my father had dismissed as impractical were now driving unprecedented demand for luxury accommodations. "Set up a meeting with Victoria for tomorrow," I said, "and start researching construction sites in San Francisco, Seattle, and Denver." As Jake walked away, I noticed a familiar figure near the hotel's restaurant entrance. Dr. Patricia Whitman, my former graduate advisor, was examining the structural details of our recycled steel framework with obvious fascination. "Professor Whitman?" I approached her with genuine surprise. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Marcus," she turned with a warm smile. "I've been following this project since the groundbreaking. When I heard you were implementing the research from your graduate thesis, I had to see it in person." "You mean the research that was supposed to be, quote, too theoretical for practical application?" I couldn't resist the gentle reminder of her initial skepticism. "I was wrong," she admitted. "What you've accomplished here proves that academic research and real-world innovation can create something truly transformative. I'm already incorporating this project into my curriculum for next semester." We spent 20 minutes discussing the technical challenges we'd overcome, the unexpected benefits of certain material choices, and the potential applications for other building types. It felt surreal to be explaining practical construction techniques to the professor who had once questioned their feasibility. "Marcus," she said as our conversation wound down, "you've done something remarkable here. You've proven that environmental responsibility and commercial success aren't mutually exclusive. That's a lesson the entire industry needs to learn." The evening's highlight was Victoria Chen's formal presentation of the LEED Platinum certification, the highest environmental rating possible for commercial buildings. She called me to the stage in front of the assembled crowd. "The Meridian downtown represents a new paradigm in hospitality construction," Victoria announced. "This building will prevent the emission of over 12,000 tons of carbon dioxide annually while providing luxury accommodations that exceed every traditional standard." The audience applauded as she handed me the certification plaque. Looking out at the crowd, I saw faces that represented every phase of my journey. Former professors, industry colleagues, Westfield employees, and family members who had doubted and supported me in equal measure. 2 years ago, I said into the microphone, I sat alone at a table outside my father's birthday party, wondering if I'd lost everything that mattered. Tonight, I'm standing in a building that proves something important. Our biggest failures often prepare us for our greatest successes. I caught my father's eye in the crowd. He was smiling with an expression I hadn't seen since childhood. Pure, uncomplicated pride. "The Meridian downtown isn't just a hotel," I continued. "It's proof that we can build a future that's both sustainable and profitable, both innovative and practical. It's proof that sometimes the best response to being seated outside the party is to build your own venue." After the formal presentations ended, guests moved throughout the hotel to experience its various amenities. I found myself on the rooftop restaurant, looking out at the Los Angeles skyline. The city spread out below us, a grid of lights extending to the horizon. My father joined me at the railing, holding 2 glasses of champagne. "To new beginnings," he said, offering me one of the glasses. "To sustainable construction," I replied, raising my glass to meet his. We stood in comfortable silence, watching traffic move through the streets far below. The Meridian's solar panels continued generating electricity from the city's ambient light, and the rainwater collection system quietly filled storage tanks for tomorrow's operations. "I have a proposition," my father said eventually. "Blackwood Construction and Westfield Development could accomplish more together than either company could alone. What would you think about a merger?" I considered the offer carefully. 6 months ago, I would have seen it as validation, proof that I'd finally earned my father's respect. Now, it felt like something different, recognition between equals. "I'm interested," I said, "but as partners, not as father and son. This would be a business decision based on strategic advantages, not family dynamics." "Agreed, though I hope we can work on the family dynamics separately." "I'd like that too." My phone buzzed with a text from the hotel's general manager. "Presidential suite guest requests meeting tomorrow. Says he's interested in commissioning a similar project in Dubai." The international expansion opportunities were already beginning. Architecture firms from 3 continents had sent representatives to tonight's opening. Environmental consultants were requesting detailed case studies for their own projects. The construction techniques we'd developed for the Meridian were about to influence building practices worldwide. Jake appeared on the rooftop with a tablet full of new messages and meeting requests. "The media response is overwhelming," he reported. "CNN wants an interview for their environmental technology segment. The New York Times is planning a feature story. And we have preliminary inquiries about projects in London, Singapore, and Sydney. What about our capacity to handle expansion?" That's the beautiful part. The sustainable construction methods are actually easier to scale than traditional techniques. Once we establish supply chains for the specialized materials, we can replicate this model anywhere in the world. As the evening wound down, I walked through the Meridian's corridors one final time. Hotel guests were checking into rooms powered by renewable energy, cooled by geothermal systems, and supplied with purified rainwater. The building hummed with quiet efficiency, a testament to the integration of environmental technology and luxury hospitality. In the lobby, the last guests were departing into the Los Angeles night. Victoria Chen approached me as I watched the crowd thin out. "Marcus, this has exceeded every expectation. The board voted unanimously to proceed with the expansion plan. We want to build 5 more Meridian properties using your sustainable model." "I'm ready when you are." "There's one more thing. We're recommending you for the National Environmental Leadership Award. The nomination goes to Washington next month." I looked around the lobby one final time, at the living walls, the recycled steel framework, the solar-integrated ceiling that continued generating power even in the evening light. 18 months ago, this had been an empty lot. Now it was proof that innovation could triumph over convention, that sustainability could enhance rather than compromise luxury. The helicopter ride from my father's birthday party had been about escape. Everything since then had been about construction, not just of buildings, but of a future I'd never dared to imagine. My phone rang. The caller ID showed an international number. "Mr. Blackwood, this is Chen Wei from Shanghai Development Corporation. We understand you build hotels that generate their own electricity. We would like to discuss a project in China." I smiled and walked toward the elevator that would take me to my office 40 floors above the city. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new opportunities, and new chances to prove that the most sustainable thing we can build is a better future. 3 months after the Meridian's opening, I found myself back in a helicopter, but this time by choice. We were flying over potential construction sites in San Francisco, evaluating locations for the second Meridian property. The Bay Area's complex environmental regulations made it the perfect testing ground for our advanced sustainable technologies. "The Embarcadero site has the best access to geothermal resources," I told Victoria through the headset, pointing to a waterfront lot below us. "But the Mission Bay location offers better solar exposure and wind patterns for our renewable energy systems." Victoria studied both sites through the helicopter's window. The Embarcadero site is more expensive, but the environmental impact would be revolutionary. Imagine a luxury hotel that actually improves the bay's water quality through its filtration systems. The pilot banked toward the Golden Gate Bridge, giving us a spectacular view of the city's skyline. San Francisco's strict building codes and environmental requirements would push our sustainable construction methods to new limits. But that's exactly what excited me about the challenge. My phone rang with a call from Jake back in Los Angeles. I answered through the helicopter's communication system. "Marcus, you need to hear this." Jake's voice crackled through the headset. "The Dubai project just got approved. Sheikh Hassan Al Maktoum wants to build the world's largest sustainable luxury resort. We're talking about a $2 billion contract." Victoria's eyes widened. The Dubai project had been in negotiations for months, but the scale kept expanding as the client became more ambitious about environmental innovation. "What's the timeline?" I asked. "They want to break ground in 6 months. The resort will have 3 hotels, a conference center, and a research facility dedicated to desert sustainability technologies. It's going to be our most complex project yet." After landing in San Francisco, Victoria and I spent the afternoon touring the potential construction sites on foot. The Embarcadero location sat on a pier that extended into the bay, offering unique opportunities for tidal energy generation and seawater cooling systems. The engineering challenges would be significant, I admitted, examining the site's geological survey data, but we could build something that actually helps restore the bay's ecosystem while providing luxury accommodations. "That's exactly the kind of innovation that drives bookings," Victoria replied. "Environmental tourists are willing to pay premium rates for authentic sustainability experiences." The Mission Bay site offered different advantages. Located near the city's biotech corridor, it could serve as a showcase for cutting-edge environmental technologies. The proximity to research universities would provide access to the latest innovations in sustainable construction materials. Both sites have potential, I concluded, but the Embarcadero location could establish us as pioneers in marine environmental construction. That expertise would be valuable for coastal projects worldwide. That evening, we met with San Francisco's Planning Commission to discuss the project's environmental impact assessments. The city's officials were surprisingly enthusiastic about our sustainable construction methods. Your Los Angeles project has become a model for urban environmental development, Planning Commissioner Margaret Liu explained. San Francisco wants to be equally innovative in demonstrating that luxury development can enhance rather than degrade urban ecosystems. The preliminary approval process would take 4 months, but the city fast-tracked environmental reviews for projects meeting certain sustainability criteria. Our Meridian model qualified for every available incentive program. Flying back to Los Angeles that night, I reflected on how dramatically my perspective had changed since that helicopter ride from my father's birthday party. Back then, I'd been fleeing humiliation and uncertainty. Now I was pursuing opportunities that would reshape entire skylines. The next morning brought news that would accelerate our expansion plans even further. Dr. Sarah Chen from MIT's Sustainable Technology Institute called with an unexpected proposition. "Marcus, we've been studying the Meridian's performance data for 3 months," she said during our video conference. "Your building is achieving energy efficiency levels we didn't think were possible in luxury hospitality applications." "The integrated systems approach seems to create synergistic effects," I replied. "Each sustainable technology enhances the performance of the others." Exactly. That's why MIT wants to partner with Westfield Development on a new research initiative. We're proposing to build a demonstration facility that would test next-generation sustainable construction techniques. The MIT partnership would provide access to cutting-edge research while giving us a laboratory for developing even more advanced environmental technologies. The demonstration facility could become a training center for sustainable construction methods worldwide. "What kind of timeline are you considering?" I asked. "We could break ground next spring. The facility would include testing labs, conference spaces, and guest accommodations. Essentially a working hotel that doubles as a research center." Jake knocked on my office door and entered with a stack of contracts requiring my signature. The Dubai project alone involved coordinating with suppliers across 4 continents and managing regulatory requirements in multiple jurisdictions. "The materials procurement for Dubai is more complex than anything we've handled," Jake reported. "The desert environment requires specialized solar panels, and the cooling systems need to function in temperatures that would disable conventional equipment." "What about local partnerships?" Sheikh Hassan has connected us with Emirati engineering firms that specialize in desert construction. They're excited about adapting our sustainable technologies for extreme climate conditions. The Dubai project would test our methods in ways we'd never anticipated. Traditional air conditioning systems consume enormous amounts of energy in desert climates, but our geothermal cooling could potentially eliminate that requirement entirely. Solar panels would generate massive amounts of electricity year-round, making the resort energy positive even during peak occupancy. "The most interesting challenge is water management," Jake continued. "We're developing atmospheric water generation systems that can produce fresh water from desert humidity. Combined with advanced recycling, the resort could be completely water independent." My father called that afternoon with news about the merger between Blackwood Construction and Westfield Development. The legal teams had finalized the structure, creating a new entity called Blackwood Westfield Sustainable Development. "The combined company will have resources to tackle projects we couldn't handle individually," he explained. "Your expertise in sustainable technology paired with our established relationships creates unlimited potential." "What about management structure?" "Co-CEOs with clearly defined responsibilities. You handle innovation and environmental projects. I manage traditional construction and client relationships. We make major decisions together." The merger made strategic sense, but it also represented something more personal, a professional reconciliation that had seemed impossible just 2 years earlier. Working together would require trust, communication, and respect for each other's strengths. 3 weeks later, I stood in the Meridian's lobby watching a Japanese television crew film a documentary about sustainable architecture. The hotel had become an international symbol of environmental innovation, attracting visitors who came specifically to experience our sustainable technologies. The building's living walls process over 10,000 cubic feet of air per hour, I explained to the camera. Guests breathe cleaner air inside the hotel than they do on the streets outside. The documentary would air across Asia, potentially generating interest in sustainable construction projects throughout the region. Architecture schools were already using the Meridian as a case study, and engineering firms worldwide were adapting our methods for their own projects. My phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. London site approved. Construction starts January. Prepare for your first international project. The London Meridian would face unique challenges, integrating sustainable technology with historic preservation requirements, managing construction in a densely populated urban environment, and adapting our systems for a completely different climate. But those challenges excited rather than intimidated me. Each new project pushed the boundaries of what sustainable construction could achieve, proving that environmental responsibility and commercial success could not only coexist but enhance each other. As I watched the sun set over Los Angeles through the Meridian's solar-integrated windows, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The helicopter ride from my father's party had lasted 20 minutes. The empire we were building would reshape cities for decades to come. The party I'd been excluded from had lasted one evening. The sustainable future we were constructing would benefit generations. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.